Economic crisis. What is the meaning of economic crisis? In any complex system, a crisis is a period of where the system functions very poorly, warranting immediate corrective action. Causes of an economic crisis. Since most economic crises are unexpected, it is usually difficult to determine the exact cause of the crisis. However, there are a number of situations that provide the setting for an economic. It is important to note that the presence of these conditions does not automatically lead to an economic crisis. An economy is a very complex system, and for such a system to dysfunction, the conditions have to be persistent over a long period of time. Here are some of the causes of an economic crisis. 1. Uncertainty. 2. Fraud. 3. Related markets. 4. Mismatch between assets and liabilities.
You are about to learn one of the biggest events that may happen at any time. It's an event that has huge effects for everyone lives in this planet. Most people can feel deep down that something isn't quite right with the world's economy, but few know what it is. Gone the day when the family can survive on only just one paycheck. Every day it seems that things are more and more out of control. Yet, only 1 in a million understands why. What is this event? This event is the US debt default. What do we mean by the US debt default? It means that the US wouldn't be able to pay its debts, or they would stop paying the money that it owed to US Treasury bondholders. Do you know the US debt to GDP ratio? It's 110%, above $17 trillion. Since 1960, the US debt ceiling has been raised 79 times. The US debt to GDP ratio in 2007 was 64%, while in 2013 it's about 110%. The US is heading towards higher debt levels, and it is continually raising its debt ceiling. Has the US defaulted before? Not really. There are 3 examples in the US history that come close to default. In 1933 and in 1790, they both involved defaults when creditors were forced to take less money than what they were owed. And the most recent one was in 1979. It was for a word processing error.
I know many Americans have questions tonight. How did we reach this point in our economy? And what does this mean for your financial future? These are good questions, and they deserve clear answers.
Is a default is the first time in 237 years, the history of this country, that the United States would not pay its bills. What that means is the government does not stand behind its word, and the confidence in our financial system would be severely eroded. This would be catastrophic.
The US has never experienced a real default. Imagine what has happened to the US when they were near the edge of default in the 4th quarter of 2013. Businesses unable to work in full capacity. Public sector contracts see delays on payment. Unemployment is already on the rise due to public shutdown. The most ironic shock about this shutdown is that's not saving money, but it's costing money. Sick Americans are out in the cold. For each week, hundreds of patients cannot be accepted for treatment in the National Institutes of Health, including cancer patients. 75% of staff is not working because of this shutdown, and patients in need of treatment are suffering. Veterans are outraged for closing public parks and war monuments due to this shutdown. Government has run out of cash to pay some 100,000 federal workers during the deadlock over the weekends. What would happen if the US defaulted? Global recession, global stock market crash, economic effects, rise in unemployment. Disinflationary pressures, US currency will lose its value. Financial effects, higher premium rates on the US government debt. The US yield curve will steepen. World war rise, interest convergence, run on the banks. Large negative effects on other economies. Interest rates on personal loans will increase. Higher mortgages rates and higher borrowing costs. The default might influence the political power of the US also. They wouldn't be able to continue financing their own military funds, and they would no longer be the world's largest economy.
The mortgage crisis is a serious financial crisis appeared to suddenly surface in 2007, which triggered the start granting banks to grant high-risk loans, and started the crisis grows like a snowball to threaten the real estate sector in the United States. And the banking and global financial markets pose a threat to the global financial economy.
The subprime mortgage crisis. In the old days, a qualified home buyer would simply visit his or her own traditional hometown bank. That bank would then offer that qualified home buyer a traditional prime rate mortgage. Wanting to get in on this action, investment bankers began to buy up these mortgages. They would then bundle these mortgages into what are known as CDOs, and then they would sell those CDOs to outside investors. Then, unfortunately, a combination of Wall Street greed and the government's desire to increase home ownership in this country, subprime mortgages became widely available to the masses. Investment bankers wanting to get a part of this action began to include subprime mortgages in the CDOs they were selling to outside investors. This increase in home ownership caused an artificial increase in home prices until subprime mortgages began to default. Because these defaulting subprime mortgages were included in some CDOs, the CDOs became worthless investments. Investors, big and small, lost a fortune. Home prices began to fall as foreclosures increased, and then economies around the world began to collapse as credit froze and the banks ultimately needed to be bailed out by the taxpayers.
Gulf stock markets. Gulf markets have seen a sharp decline in trading stock exchanges. Financial analysts attributed this decline to the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers, the fourth largest investment bank in America. Stock indicators also fell in the Gulf states to the lowest level since a year and a half, with a flight of investors from the market for fear of vulnerability to the consequences of the recent turmoil in the U.S. financial sector. The Saudi stock market closed lower market 6.5%, registered 7,255.15 points. In terms of trading, the index were 34.3% of its value since the beginning of the year 2008. and closed the Kuwait Stock Exchange, the second largest stock exchange in the Arab world, a decline of 3.8%, bringing the index to 12,306.2 points, or a loss of 488 points, the largest loss in one day in the year 2008.